So what do you
Mhm.
think?
Sure,
Should we start?
sure.
Okay. I would like to open up the September 11th, 2023 Inland and Wetland Watercourses Agency meeting at 7 p.m. We have Lee Schumacher, Anna Loss, and Joe Boudreau, as well as myself, Kayla Freidenberg, attending. Our first order of business is well, we have two public hearings. So we have 23-39 Longshore Lane. And so I will make a move that I know we're going to open and close, right, Aaron?
Well, open and
Continue.
Madam Chair, but I did want to read the legal notice just for the
Okay.
for public hearings. Sorry, I didn't have that pulled up before. Okay. Notice is hereby given that the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 11th, 2023 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be conducted remotely as a Zoom online webinar. The public is invited to attend by joining the webinar link through either the webinar link or call-in information below. The webinar ID for this evening is 915-8196-6735, and the passcode is 452138. Further details about how to participate in the webinar are posted on the Town of Madison website, www.madisonct.org. Application materials will be posted to the website under the calendar link to the meeting. Questions and/or comments may be emailed to the link to landuse@madisonct.org up to 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Applications for public hearing this evening include number 23-39 Longshore Lane, map 25, lot 74-1, owner Lily Fogel, applicant John Paul Garcia of John Paul Garcia Associates. It's a regulated activity application to restore a disturbed area to a pre-disturbance condition and allow for the construction of a 10-foot wide trail for the purpose of maintaining and accessing property that is landlocked within an inland wetland and 100-foot upland review area. Application number 23-49, 24 Old Schoolhouse Road, map 63, lot 18, owner applicant Kent E. Allen. It's a regulated activity for construction of a single-family residence and associated driveway, subsurface sewage disposal system, water supply well, and building utility services within the 100-foot upland review area. At this hearing, written communications will be received and interested parties will be heard. Dated this 21st day of August, 2023, K. Aloha Freidenberg, Chairwoman, and this ran in the source once on August 31st, 2023, and once on September 7th, 2023.
Okay. That's great. Okay, so we can open up 23-39 Longshore Lane. So I make a motion that we open the public hearing for this application.
Okay.
All right. Lee seconding. All in favor? Raise your hands, say aye. Okay. So the public hearing is now open for 23-39 Longshore Lane. However, I believe that that we are going to be continuing this. Is that
Yes.
correct?
We've
Yes.
received a written request from the applicant to open and immediately continue the hearing to the October 2nd Inland Wetlands Agency meeting.
Okay, that's great. So I
Got the
will,
applicant here tonight. I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing for application 23-39 to the August 2nd meeting of this agency.
October 2nd.
Oh, did I say September?
You said August.
Oh,
You're
I thought I said
You're
October.
time traveling. You're time traveling.
I thought I said October.
Uh,
To October 2.
My second.
All right. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
All right, so that public hearing, we will revisit in October.
Yes, and just to clarify, the applicant is here, but we did receive a request in writing from the applicant to open and continue. So I think John Paul is here and acknowledging that he is here as well.
Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Great. All right. Well, then I will make another motion that we open the public hearing for 23-49, 24 Old Schoolhouse Road.
I'll second.
Second.
Yes.
Lee. Yep.
These seconds, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. All right, that's a unanimous vote for opening the public hearing. And I assume we do have the applicant here?
Yes, Michael Ott, on behalf of the applicant, is joining as a panelist now. Sorry, that was my delay, not Michael's.
Great. All right, so I guess what we can do is hear from, have the applicant explain the application.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summer Hill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors here in Madison. So I'm here on behalf of Kent and Susan Allen, who own the property at 24 Old Schoolhouse Road. I think you were, or maybe Anna, maybe you weren't on the sidewalk, but I think everyone else was, I think, a couple Saturdays ago. So this is Old Schoolhouse Road is actually the last commonly traveled anyway town road in Madison that's not paved. And it runs between Mungertown Road, the north end of Mungertown Road, and Nortontown Road. So it connects the two in an east-west direction. Aaron, can I share my screen?
Yes, sure.
So can the members see my screen now?
Yes.
So this is the record subdivision map that created the lot that has a street address of 24 Old Schoolhouse Road. So this is Old Schoolhouse Road on the bottom, if you can see my cursor moving from the left to right, and this is Nortontown Road on the left, and Mungertown Road would be running north-south off the sheet to the right. So this is Town Clerk's map 3135. It's the record subdivision map again that created the lot, and this was in I'm just going to double check. I think it was 1986. Yeah, 1986. So the subdivision was approved in 1986. The Inland Wetland and Watercourses Act was in effect, of course, then. So you can see the wetland boundary that they had delineated on the lot. And you can, if I zoom out just a little, you can see that the majority of the lot is inland wetland. Only this portion of the frontage along Old Schoolhouse Road is upland. So I'm going to switch drawings. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I might have to stop sharing, but did you see can you guys see the change in plan?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So we, and the first step in developing the plan for this lot, we had the wetland boundary redelineated by Richard Snarsky. So the boundary that you see on our drawing is, the drawings we submitted is the recently delineated inland wetland boundary. We did a topographic survey. We designed a septic system. We did soil testing with the health department. We designed and submitted a septic system, and that was approved by the health department. So The 100-foot upland review area from the inland wetland is this blue dashed line. And you can see that of course, the upland review area encompasses all of the upland area. It actually goes out into Old Schoolhouse Road, as you can see here. So this is this line that I'm tracing is the edge of Old Schoolhouse Road. So, you know, we took this in steps. We recognized that this is an atypical lot. There's not a lot of room for a house and a driveway and a septic system and a well. So we did the best we could to design a septic system that was at a minimum 50 feet from the inland wetland boundary. The driveway rises from Old Schoolhouse Road. It rises up. So the narrow port, you know, the normal driveway drains back down towards Old Schoolhouse Road. And if you study the elevations of the driveway pad, you'll see that it pitches from left to right. So it doesn't drain back towards the inland wetland. It drains in this direction to the north. It would be a very short distance to the inland wetland boundary. It drains to the east, where it's a longer distance perpendicular to the contours to the wetland boundary. So that was done purposefully so that the driveway either drained out to the road, and the portion in the pad that doesn't has some vegetated area to accept the runoff from it before it reaches the wetland boundary. The house is 30 by 40. It's 1,200 square feet. It would be slab on grade construction, no basement, so no foundation drains. It is as close to the building setback lines as we can make it. This corner is 1 foot off the setback line, and the front is 1 foot in parallel to the setback line. There's a small patio on the left side proposed that we talked about to give the residents a little bit of outdoor space. And then in the rear, I should tell you about the well. We located the well way off to the right so that it also would be greater than 50 feet to the wetland boundary. So the entire septic system and the well water supply line and electric line are more than 50 feet from the wetland boundary. So, excuse me. So because of the relationship between the building setback lines and the wetland boundary, you can see that the house is close in the rear. It's as close as 14.5 feet to the wetland boundary at wetland flag 12 here. What I've shown here is grading at 4 to 1. So this would be a 4 to 1 slope coming from the back of the house down, and the back of the driveway pad and the side of the driveway pad down. So it's a reasonable slope that would be vegetated. It would require filling of this crosshatched triangular area of inland wetland that we looked at in the field on the walk. And it is about approximately 350 square feet. I moved the silt fence or the sediment control barrier, this dark dashed line, back from the house 20 feet, as we talked about on the walk, just to give to keep vegetation and trees and tree branches basically away from the house. I think it's a reasonable distance behind the house to have a 20-foot clear width. So in this triangular area, to achieve that, we would have to clear vegetation and we would have to place some fill. If you remember on the walk, I think we determined that there were only 1 or 2 trees, if I remember right, greater than 6-inch diameter within this triangular area that would have to come down. There's other vegetation, of course, that would have to be removed for sure. So we also had Rich Snarsky take a look. I'll zoom out a little bit. We had Rich take a look at whether he thought along the limits of disturbance, which would be the sediment control barrier, the dark dashed line, should we plant buffer plantings? And he thought we should. And he wrote a letter, which we've submitted. It should be part of the record. I can bring it up if, can you now see his letter on my screen?
Yes.
So this is the letter that we submitted from him, from Rich Snarsky from New England Environmental Services, and he recommended, I'll zoom in a little bit, these shrub species and quantities and size to be planted. And that would be within that green area that I'll go back to and show you again, that strip all along the limits of disturbance and the limits of clearing. Let me go back to that. Sorry, wrong plan. So that can you see the green color on your screen?
Yes.
Yep.
So that green color would be that 8-foot width planting buffer that Rich Snarsky recommended. Any questions so far?
What's the length of that buffer? If you,
If I go to my CAD drawing, I'd be able to tell you, Lee, if you bear with me a second.
even if it's just approximate,
Yeah, well, if this is 40 feet, it must be 40, 80, 120, it must be 160 plus, I would guess,
sounds right. Okay.
if that's 40. No,
Okay.
so because this is the agency deemed this as significant activity, which is why we're holding the public hearing, of course. I took a look at, let me see if I can switch screens again. This is an exhibit plan, just a very quick thing I did to see what would happen if we built a retaining wall. And that would be this red kind of double hatched line that you see. So it would, if we were to construct this retaining wall, which is some 115 feet in length, right up against the back of the house and right up against the back of the driveway pad, we would not have to do the grading behind the house that we're proposing on the plan. We would and I actually reduced this to 15 feet from the sediment control barrier to the back of the house, and the back of the wall is only 15 feet. We would still have to clear 100 square feet of the wetland, but we would not have to place any fill in it. So if in this alternate plan, if we were to construct the wall, we would not place any fill behind the house, including we would not have to place fill in the triangular area that I showed you in the first drawing, but we would have to remove vegetation within this 100 square foot triangular area just to get, again, vegetation and trees back a reasonable distance from the house and the driveway. I'm not proposing that we do this. I don't think it's, I don't know that it makes sense in terms of, and I'll switch back, in terms of potential adverse impacts to the inland wetland. So in the plan, we are recommending and proposing, again, we would clear 350 square feet rather than 100, and we would place some fill, but as you can see, we would replant the green, not only the green area within the triangular area of inland wetland, but outside along the limits of disturbance. So I think that's pretty much it, unless the members have other questions.
I was on mute earlier, so I'm gonna assume this lot was approved by a wetlands agency in 1986.
So, yeah, let me go back. This is again, the record subdivision map.
Hmm.
So this is 1986, so the Inland Wetland and Watercourses Act, I think, became effective in 1972 or 4. I always get those mixed up. It's one of the two, I think. So the wetland regulations were in place, which is of course why this boundary is flagged. And so this is again, a lot. Let me zoom in on the approval date. So this is a lot of record. This is the record subdivision map filed in the town's land records. And this is, as you can see, this is the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission's approval signature, and you can see the date of May of 1986.
Right, so that's just, this would not have gone through wetlands because there wasn't anything proposed at the time.
Oh, actually, I don't know if it went to the wetland agency. They did show, I would imagine it would have had to, because they did, as you can see, show a potential house and a septic system and a well, all clearly within, actually within 50 feet. See the 50-foot dimension here? So,
I think it would have had to at least been a subdivision referral.
Right, so maybe that was a subdivision referral.
That's what I was getting at.
That expired, but at least the referral.
actually,
Go
I thought the same thing. And then I thought, was the subdivision referral language in effect back in 1986?
Yeah,
I don't
good
know.
question.
Statewide, I don't know.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just saying it's a good question if the referral language was in effect in 86. So here in front of a planning and zoning commission, they're just showing things fit for them. So I just wanted to make sure if we're looking at a lot that was previously blessed by a wetland agency, then I'd be more incurred to being in favor of this because the door was opened by a wetland agency. But
There is a note, I'll zoom in on this. I forgot about this, but look at note A. If you can read that.
Right, it says certain construction activities require permit from the Madison Inland Wetlands Agency. So it didn't go, it sounds like it didn't go through. This sounds like a subdivision referral. Which is different, right?
Could have been. Yeah, I really don't know. Could have been.
In any case, any permitting or any, would have expired long ago. So we are looking at your plan today.
Yeah, and that's why we redid the boundary and we kind of started over from scratch.
Are there other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, I just would like to acknowledge that Martin Brogy joined the meeting in the beginning of Mr. Ott's presentation and has been here all this time. I just didn't want to interrupt him.
Excellent.
And I had one question, Michael, if you could speak to the delineation of the wetland as far as a permanent delineation that you're proposing on the site. I don't think you mentioned that yet.
I did not. I forgot. And I think we talked about it on the walk, but so what we've proposed is to place, and I'll go to that sheet, but you see this call out for an inland wetland boundary marker. What we've proposed is that let me switch sheets here if you can. Can you guys see the change in the sheet?
Yes,
Okay. So what we were proposing was that because we can't really mark the upland review area because it's literally out in the road. It wouldn't make a lot of sense, or it's out in front of the house. So what I thought we might do with your approval is place actual boundary, markers on the actual boundary. So I think I told you this in the field. I took the town's current plaques. I think you have two, one for conservation easement boundaries and one for, I think it might be labeled a node, or it might be actually the upland review area boundary, can't remember. And I modified it a little bit just to say that it's actually marking the actual inland wetland boundary. So if you look at the plaques that you use now, this is in fact is the plaque. It does say no disturbance on it, and I just added the inland wetland boundary language. So we're proposing, actually, I have a note in here that this was just preliminary wording, and that, you know, the way what this plaque says is really up to you all. But this was an idea, and the intent was to mark the boundary at every inland wetland boundary flag, or at you know, at intermediate points, so that there's no more than 50 feet between each plaque. And the plaques were intended to be set on small timber posts, small wood posts.
I like the plaque idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we would, by the way, we would do the entire boundary all the way to the east. We had Rich Snarsky flag the wetland all the way to the easterly property boundary, so we would mark the entire thing, not just the area of the site development.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the agency?
Mike, have you given any thought to, I mean, if they built this house here, where would you envision the lawn ending on the east side? I guess that's to the right of this drawing.
Yeah, down to the green area, to the westerly side of the green planting area. So right, you know, right here, Lee, that's what I was thinking. So you'd
Well,
have about,
Go ahead.
these are 4-to-1, so this is about 16 or so feet from the edge of the driveway. And then there would be the 8 foot of planted area, the native shrubs, and then you'd be back at the existing natural vegetation.
So you don't envision the homeowner, that area between the sedimentation boundary line and the wetland area on the furthest to the right side of the lot, right in there. You don't envision the homeowner to get more lawn encroaching in there closer to the wetland.
No, we're certainly not proposing that. The sediment control barrier is intended to be the limits of disturbance and clearing. So there would be no removal of vegetation beyond the sediment control barrier.
Right, for your project, but I guess maybe what Lee's getting at, but after that, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking the plantings need to go further. Frankly, is what I'm thinking, Mike.
I got you, yeah. So we could extend them along the sediment control barrier back to the stone wall, say?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, because the homeowner's not gonna have any lot, not have any grass, and they may want to take that area at some point and forget that they have to call us before they do any clearing in that area.
Yeah, we could do that. We could extend that planted area.
Okay, thanks. That's my question.
And then I guess would the plaques follow that limit of clearing planting then, I assume?
Yeah, that, you know, maybe that's a better idea, is to actually mark the, not sure what, I guess we'd call it a no disturbance, you know, beyond this point, but we could mark that line, essentially the black heavy dashed line, rather than the wetland boundary.
Yeah, I think that's a better idea.
Yeah, because the wetland boundary, that's a hard boundary, but anything in the upland review is regulated, right?
Yeah,
And they're so close that maybe this kind of helps keep
Yeah.
unintended clearing from happening.
that's a good idea, actually. That's a real good idea.
That's great. Thank you, Lee. Um, okay. Anything else from the agency? And then, of course, we will ask if there's anybody from the public. I haven't forgotten.
This is Martin here. I just for the record, I did get a chance to go out and see the site on my own. And 20 feet, I think, from the wetland boundary for a house is pretty tight. And I'm still nervous about setting that as a precedent in Madison. So that's my concern here. It's very close. And the fill is right along the boundary, and it's a pretty high quality wetland according to Mr. Snarsky. So I'm concerned about setting that kind of a precedent here.
So, Mike, Ott, given you had your alternate of the retaining wall, and outside of the preferred plan, giving the homeowner a little space, what else do you see as differences between the two? It's a third less fill, for sure, right?
It would be no fill actually within the wetland. It's a third less wetland area disturbance.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, so I'll go back to that exhibit plan. So we'd still clear this little triangle, which is 100 square feet rather than 350, but we would not have to place any fill in it. And we would only clear it just to get it back from the house and the driveway. And again, like I was saying earlier, this is only 15 feet. This distance.
Is there a architectural rendering of what the house looks like?
Can you say that again, Joe?
Oh, is there an architectural rendering of what the house looks like available?
No, it would just, it's 30 by 40. It's a cape. It's slab on grade. It would just be a small cape.
Single story?
It would have an upstairs.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah,
It would
like
have a ground floor and an upstairs.
okay, nope.
Yeah.
Understood.
We tried to pick the smallest reasonable house.
Yeah.
If I may too, why would you need to clear that area of wetlands?
Because as I said earlier, I think, let me go back to this plan. So I personally think, and I said this on the walk, that 20 feet is a reasonable, and that's what this shows, 20 feet is a reasonable distance from the back of a house to not have vegetation and tree branches overhanging the house, and for maintenance, and let some sunlight in. And I think 20 feet is a reasonable distance. On the exhibit plan, because I tried to show an alternate, I reduced it to 15 feet. I don't like that. And within that 15 feet is this 100 square foot triangular area. And in the walk, as I said earlier, when we were on the walk, we could see wetland flags 11, 12, and 13. And we could tell that if I recall, there was only a couple of trees. There's other vegetation that has to be clear, but there was only a couple trees actually within this larger triangular area of 350 square feet. So I guess in really simple terms, the purpose of clearing is to keep vegetation and tree branches and trees themselves a reasonable distance off the back of the house, allow some sunlight to come in, allow for maintenance of the home. So you don't open your window and feel like you're right up against the edge of the wood line. I think it's a fairly reasonable distance.
It's actually that's the north side, so the sun would be coming from the other direction.
I would imagine you're still going to get some sunlight instead of it just being dark all the time. So those are the reasons that I think we should remove the vegetation back 20 feet. And again, we can't move the house further towards Old Schoolhouse Road.
I agree with Martin, setting the precedence for this kind of construction so close to the wetlands. And I do appreciate that first off, there's a planting plan, but also that you're willing to extend that planting area. But when you have fill in the wetlands, I'm curious, was there any plan for compensating the filling of wetlands?
No, to create additional wetland, you mean, for the proposed filling?
Not necessarily create, because that's a pretty extensive process, but maybe enhance.
We didn't talk about that with Rich. I think Rich thought that the buffer plantings made sense. I mean, I could talk to Rich. I'm not sure what we would do to enhance the wetland.
Mhm.
Did you go out to the site, Anna?
I wasn't able to, but I looked at it with aerial imagery.
I could certainly talk to him. I'm going to stray a little bit from engineering here, and maybe Aaron can help me, but it's my understanding that there's no such thing as setting a precedent. That I know that gets said a lot in a lot of towns. My understanding is that every application is unique and every situation is different. And if you were to approve something on this lot, on this parcel of land, or another parcel of land, it's my understanding that you don't. I know it's human nature to think that you're setting a precedent, but it's my understanding that that's not the case. Aaron can check with the town's land use council, but that's what I've been taught all these years. So
No,
I don't have a land use attorney with me to help me, nor do I have a wetland scientist, but I think that Rich Snarsky, having been out here and looked at this plan with me in the field, he thought that creating the buffer planting along the limit of disturbance. Now based on Lee's request, it'll be the full limit of disturbance. Made sense, and that placing fill in that triangular area and removing its vegetation wasn't going to have an adverse impact on the inland wetland.
Well, so I understand where Anna's coming from, and you hear the word precedent a lot, especially when it comes to variances and should they be granted. But here, this lot is incredibly tight. I don't even know if it would qualify as a legal lot today. So I know I'm feeling, before we go to the public, that without proof that the wetland agency in 86 had a bite of this apple, I'm finding this proposal a little much for this property. Although I do like how Rich Snarsky designed a buffering plan, and I like how Lee came up with the idea of extending it along the line of where the ENS is shown. I've had hard times with swimming pools being this close to wetlands. This one's a tough one for me.
Joe, let me add a couple things. My house, the house that my wife and I live in, was built in 1994 on a
Mm.
lot very, very similar to this. We have wetlands within 30, 40 feet of the south side of our house, and
Mm.
probably 60, maybe 50 feet in back of our house. And when we moved in, it was all lawn, probably 30 or 40 feet into the wetland. And I finally gave up trying to keep up with the lawn because the forest and the wetlands have a real amazing ability to encroach on our house. So I'm going to be inclined, and I'm not worried about precedent. I think I'm going to be inclined to vote to approve the application, just based on knowing how, having lived here in 20, 30 years, that on my lot at least, and it looks very similar to this, particularly with the plantings and everything, the wetlands are going to win over the homeowner is basically what my experience has been. So for what it's worth.
So, these are all great comments. To Joe's point about the inland wetlands of 1986, and Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, this is a brand new application. I don't think we're beholden to anything other than that this was approved as a building lot. Is that right, Aaron?
That's correct. This is a building lot that was approved by subdivision and filed on the land records.
Right. So this is for all intents and purposes, this gets to be ours, and not the Inland Wetlands Agency from
Oh,
1980.
no. Oh, I was just saying, was there a favorable comment from the agency on the subdivision? It had nothing to do with activity proposed back then. It was just, was there at least a favorable comment? That's all.
Well, obviously there was a referral, a positive referral. Okay, so we are still in the public hearing, so we get to discuss more and ask more questions. I think these are all valid points. Aaron, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak?
I would just ask if anyone in attendance would like to speak for or against this application to please raise your hand and we'll call on you. I see a number of people, but most of them look like our other applicants, to be honest.
Yes, I noticed that.
And
Okay,
there not be any comments, I guess the question would be the hearing is opened this evening and the agency does not have to close the hearing this evening. So if you feel there is additional information that could help you make your determination on this activity and consider prudent and feasible alternatives, then you can, list those out for Mr. Ott, and he can get you some new information for your next meeting. If you feel like you may not be ready to make a decision, or if perhaps you have other recommendations.
The only information I can think of is delineating on the plan any trees that are going to be removed.
okay. For Martin, Anna, and Joe, are there any feasible or prudent alternatives that you would like to see described in fuller detail, or any detail other than the retaining wall, which is closer? So I don't know how prudent and feasible that is. Go ahead.
So,
The retaining wall is not closer.
No, but you have this at 20 feet, and you said that alternative plan is at 15 feet.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking about feasible and prudent alternatives. I think it's up for the applicant to develop them. I know the lot is tight and we've got our setbacks to deal with. I didn't know if sliding the house to the east buys you a little bit more room, not much, but maybe a little bit more room in terms of distance from the wetlands, or making the house footprint a different shape. That's all that I can really think of, but I would leave that up to the applicant. But it's uncomfortable. The proximity just feels uncomfortable.
So,
And yeah, the
Go ahead,
buildable
Jim.
area is so tight. I mean, there really isn't an alternative. This is what they want. I'm sure they're not gonna come back with a 20 by 30 house. Smaller driveway with say a garage, or on the left side where the patio is, and have the whole driveway over there. So I see it hard to have much room for any alternatives. I think this lot is what it is, and I don't even know if there's a history of proposals in the past. It's a
I don't
tight
think
one.
so. I think I think the current owner owned it back then.
Mm.
So we can't, it doesn't seem realistic to me that you can change the shape of the house footprint. This is a pretty tiny house. We're not actually not proposing a garage. What we're trying to do here is provide a reasonable sized small home with a little bit of outdoor space, the patio, with front steps like anybody would want, and a driveway and a place to park a car or two for the people who live there. There's no garage proposed, as you can see. There's no other accessory structures of any kind. It's just a simple 1,200 square foot footprint cape with a little patio off one side of it and some front steps. I think it's about as simple as you can get. We can't slide. If you slide the house to the east, it actually gets, as you can see, if you look at where wetland flag 12 is, the house itself, rather than the driveway, would get closer to the wetland boundary, and the septic system is designed so that it is free and clear of the house and its foundation walls. You can see there's nothing down gradient of the leaching field. That was done purposefully. If we slide the house to the east, I don't know if I can even make the septic system work, actually.
Were there other test pits further to the west, or was that the only suitable area?
No, it's not because it's the only suitable area. Yes, there is a test pit right here. That's not the issue. The issue is meeting all the requirements of the public health code and having down gradient natural soils for the wastewater effluent to travel through. I don't want to put the leaching field up gradient of the foundation walls, the frost walls of this slab on grade construction house.
No, I was just suggesting that in the context of moving the house.
I'm not sure what moving the house will do.
Well, it would move it to an area where the wetlands jog to the north instead of to the south. It wouldn't do much, but that's all I can think of, but it wouldn't do much.
I don't think it does. I believe that this is the right place for the house, and it's the right place for the driveway. I think whoever lives here deserves to have a driveway and a place to park a car or two. Again, we didn't try to build a garage. We're just trying to provide a very simple, basic home and a driveway and a place to park.
Okay, so I think my read of the room is we have some rare dissent, which is okay. That's how things go on our commission. So Aaron, we could continue this, and I don't know, Mike, it sounds like there isn't a whole lot more that you can do, and it is an incredibly tight lot. There aren't really many feasible alternatives, given the space.
I think the only feasible alternative is this. If you could see my screen change.
Yeah, I have a question. Why did you make this 15 and the other one 20?
Because I was, in terms of fees, so the 20 is the distance back from the house that we were clearing. So
Mhm.
this one, we're only clearing back 15 because I was trying to, yeah, as you know, we're supposed to present an alternative. I was trying to make this an
Okay.
alternative that would have less impact. So I cut, that's why I only went, if I went back to 20, I would be clearing the same area, but we would not be placing fill in it because of
Okay.
the retaining wall.
Right, okay,
It's confusing because it looks like the wetland markers are on the sedimentation boundary. That's
yeah,
that's the
It's just-
problem.
yeah,
Oh,
it just,
sorry.
so I get what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, and I really think, I don't know if you can imagine what this would look like, but this would be a 3 to 4 foot high wall. And we'd have to put a guard on top of it, at least here where vehicles park, this section right here. And this is 115 feet long. So this would, and because of the vehicle loads up here, this would likely be a cast in place concrete cantilever retaining wall. And I think it's, in terms of the adverse impact on wetlands, which Rich doesn't think there will be one, I don't think this alternative makes sense. But it's the only thing I could think of to show you as an alternative.
So I have a question, and just considering your criteria for making decisions and especially relating to a significant activity. And maybe this is something to consider before our next meeting. Section 10.2 details your criteria for decision making, and specifically letter D, where they discuss irreversible or irretrievable loss of a wetland or watercourse resource, which would be caused by the proposed activity. And so I guess my question is the concern of the agency, some members, Martin and Anna, the specific distance to the inland wetland, the 20 feet or 15 feet, or is it the permanent loss of a wetland? Because there are other considerations or other options, as Anna had mentioned, which perhaps you were alluding to this section, Anna, the ability for further mitigation or actual creation of wetland in some areas to, as a mitigation effort for the wetlands that are filled. And if that's something, an option or something that the agency would consider. I guess to distinguish between the two, if it's simply a distance of a building to a wetland line, then the agency should identify how, what impacts that have directly on the wetland. Otherwise, we see a permanent loss of wetlands, and perhaps that is the area that should be a focus with this specific review.
Thank you, Erin. That pinpointed what I was trying to get across.
I have a question kind of along those lines. Mike just mentioned that Rich Snarsky said that the project would have no impact on the wetlands, and I just scanned Rich's report and I didn't see that language in there. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong report, but I just see the report where he recommended those plantings, and he didn't make any determination as to wetland impacts or not. I would imagine if he's recommending wetland plantings, then he's trying to mitigate some kind of impacts, but I don't see where he says the project would have no impact on the wetland functions or values.
So Rich Snarsky told me that, and I will have him write another letter, and he can tell you that in writing. I don't think Rich was trying to mitigate anything. any impact to the wetland. I think Rich generally does this rather than have a clear cut line right along the limit of disturbance, the sediment control barrier. Rich felt that even though we're taking trees down within 20 feet, that planting an 8-foot width of native shrubs along that limit of disturbance would make sense. I don't think he was trying to mitigate an impact on the wetland. I just think he thought it was a good idea to just not have a fresh cut with a lawn right down to the cut line. But I will ask him to put that in writing.
And I guess
I will.
my question is, you are, I gather that this cleared space is to provide this potential homeowner with lawn. Is that right?
Not, as you can see, not all 20 feet of it. So
Well,
these-
okay,
So
16.
the intent,
Well.
the real intent of clearing behind the house and behind the driveway is exactly what I've said. I don't think any of us would want to build a brand new house and not at least have 20 feet behind the house clear to keep vegetation away, trees, overhanging branches. I don't mean just if the trunk of a tree was exactly at 20 feet, or if it was 21 feet, you can imagine what the canopy of that tree would look like. So to remove trees to within 20 feet or 20 feet back would at least move the canopy back away from the house, away from the roof and away from the house. And you have to be able to first of all, you have to be able to construct the house. You have to get equipment around it, all the way around the foundation during its construction. And you have to be able to maintain the house when it's all done. And I don't think 20 feet is unreasonable. And the intent clearly wasn't to give them 20 feet of lawn, because 8 feet of that is going to be planted with native shrubs. These contour lines are 4 feet apart. So you've got 4, 8, 12, 16 feet.
Yeah, I think the only lawn that the homeowner is going to get is that area in the front of the house to the west of the driveway. I mean, and maybe on this west side of the house.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
there's not going to be much they can do in the back of the house except fight back the vegetation is what
Right.
they're gonna spend their time doing on that side of the house, I think.
Right.
And
So
Mike,
if you think about it, this is, you can, when you're out tomorrow or something, measure this. This is 16 feet from the back of the house would start the new planted shrub line.
right. I completely understand that. So, looking at this, is the runoff from the house, is that going directly, that's sloping back then, right, towards the wetland?
So it's a cape. So half of the roof, the gable, the ridge would run left and right. So half of the roof would go back and half of the roof would go forward. Yeah.
And the
And
driveway?
as I said earlier, the driveway pad is graded to go to the east, and the driveway itself falls from the pad down to the road. See these elevations, 501, 500.6. So this is probably 500.8 or so right here, and this is 500. The normal driveway width is sloping down towards the road, and the whole pad, that's why I showed all these grades. The whole pad grades to the east, which provides a longer overland flow distance to the wetland than simply grading it back to the north.
Okay, so I think this is, this is pretty clear. I think the issue, maybe the clearest issue, and the one that did trigger this as being a significant activity is this, irreversible loss of wetland. It's being filled in. And I don't know, what we do with that, or what you do with that, what we think about doing with that. But that is, you know, the house is pretty close. You're gonna have your, as you say, the homeowner is going to be maintaining that strip behind the house in front of a vegetated buffer. But, you know, some wetland, 350 square feet are lost.
Mhm.
And that's, I guess that's kind of where we're at. So, Aaron, given, I know we've got a lot on our plate, and Mike, and all of you, does it make sense for us to continue this or to close? Which then, Mike, you can't really add any more information.
I
would like
think you
to
want some
just-
information from Rich Snarsky, right? I
Right.
think, yeah.
Okay, yes, that was requested. Go ahead, Joe.
I want to just be honest with Mike that if you keep this open, or if the commission, the agency keeps it open, and you were able to research and find out that the Planning and Zoning Commission in '86 did get a favorable referral comment from the agency back then, I would be more inclined to approve this.
I can certainly do the research, Joe.
Yep.
We'll see what we can find.
Okay,
Just-
we could
just
talk about,
approving
I would actually like to talk, I would like to keep that kind of, I think that's fine, and you've said that, but I think going back, as I said, this is our application. It's not predicated on something from 1986. It's a building
I
law.
don't think I'm expressing it, so I'll just stop.
No, that's okay, but sorry. But I guess I personally am not going to be swayed by anything that anybody said in 1986, because this is 2023 and we have new information about how we think about wetlands, and I think we are much more knowledgeable about impacts on wetlands than we were in 1986. And I guess so for anyone's information, anything we learned from then isn't, I don't think it won't matter to me, because I think we have a very thorough application here. And I don't know what kind of information anybody in 1986 was presented with other than the building lot that Mike showed, and that, you know, the general information you get from a subdivision referral.
Hmm.
That being said, I think it's completely fine, Joe, for you to request that extra information. And I'm sorry that I
Yeah, I don't think I'm
got in your
expressing it
road.
well. Yes.
Okay. Aaron, your thoughts on, I think, well, I will say my thoughts. I think, given this discussion, that we should continue this and Mike can get some more information, and we can think about any alternatives that may make sense given this. I think we're stuck with the house and where it's at. We would be really coming back to mitigating the impacts on the wetland if that's something that we're interested in.
So
I agree.
I'm sorry, in that regard, I think it would be helpful to me. So there, in this proposal, there would clearly be a loss of 350 square feet of inland wetlands. I don't, unless Anna, you can tell me how, I don't, given this type of wetlands and its condition, I don't know how we would enhance it. I do see how we could create wetlands, inland wetland, very easily to offset the loss of 350 square feet. It would be very easy to do, even if we did it at 2-to-1. It would be very simple. I'm not saying it's worth it. I don't know, only Rich Snarsky would be able to tell me whether there's an actual benefit to do it, but I can see, having been on the site and staring at the plan, I could see where we could do that. So if that, maybe it'd be good if you all could give me a little more thoughts about mitigation for the loss, if that's something you're thinking about.
What are you thinking as far as how easy it is, Mike?
So in this particular instance, in my experience, we would have to excavate to make sure we had the right hydrology. Another, I'm gonna make this up, Lee. See this wetland flag 10 right here?
Yep.
Maybe between 11 and 10 and partway down to 9, if that's what that says. We might excavate along the wetland boundary, lower the elevation, the ground surface elevation enough to make sure we had the right hydrology. Rich would specify how that would be done, how it would be re-topsoiled or the forest layer put back, and how it would be planted. And when it was all done, we would have created an additional area of inland wetland.
But that's all, isn't it all woods back there? I mean, would you have to
It
cut
is.
down trees and stuff to do
You
that?
would. It is all, as you guys saw, it is all wooded. Yep. But and you'd have to replant. You'd basically, you'd have to replant it. So, and again, I'm not saying it makes sense in this situation.
Okay.
I'm not qualified to say whether it would provide an environmental benefit when it was all said and done, but I'm just saying it could be done.
Right.
So, and it'd be good to hear more about what you all are thinking. Otherwise, when we come to the next meeting, it'll give us, if you're really thinking that we should mitigate for the loss of the 350 square feet, then we would have some work to do with Rich to create that, show that mitigation on the plans.
Does anybody,
Um,
this is an off-the-wall question, it's probably not relevant, but does anybody know how many square feet of inland wetlands our town has?
No.
I'll
You
bet
could- you
no.
could- You
Is it
could you could maybe get that. Yukon Clear has a good site for, you can get some wetland soils, but some of our wetlands, and as we have found, right, when people go out and do survey, it
Seven.
changes.
Yep.
So you could probably get a good estimate for the town. I mean, you could get an estimate.
Order of magnitude estimate, right? Okay, never mind.
No, that's yeah. So to your point, Mike, in general, creating wetland, if wetland is being destroyed and filled in forever, is generally not a bad thing, given how much wetland is impacted every year. But to your point, this is a very specific application. Anna, I should let you speak. I don't know if any of us are qualified to tell you exactly how to do this. I mean, I have ideas. I'm sure Anna has ideas. I think it's more to the point that, as you have sensed, there is concern about this application, and ultimately we will vote yes or no on approving it, given the information that we have.
The only additional thing that I would offer is if anybody wants to see what this lot's gonna look like in 30 years, you're certainly invited over to my house. I'll show you. Because I think the challenge for the homeowner is not going to be staying out of the wetlands, but keeping the wetlands from expanding, and the forest overcoming his or her lot, for what it's worth. So you're all invited over to my house if you want to see what this lot's going to look like in 30 years.
Yeah. And I agree. I think it's tight. It's going to be a dark, mosquito-filled lot. That's not our purview as far as the mosquitoes go.
Right.
No.
I wanted to comment a little bit, maybe try and help out. Snarsky's report indicates that the wetland has a high wildlife value and a lot of wetland plant diversity. And he did not specify, say what kind of wildlife users were in the wetland and opine about diversity other than list, some of the species there. But certainly we know that the upland areas along the perimeter of wetlands that have high wildlife value are important to maintaining wildlife value within the wetland. There's an interplay between the adjacent uplands and the wetlands themselves. Often they're species dependent, but often the species use both the upland and the wetland together. And so with the significant amount of upland review area and what I would refer to as a buffer zone around the wetland perimeter, there may be impacts to one of the most significant values of this wetland, and that's wildlife, the wildlife functions and values of the wetland. So that's how I would look at it. Maybe that's something that Snarsky can speak to directly.
And if I could just jump in really quick, Mike, when you were talking about cutting into the wetlands and the potential option for mitigation. So I think, and don't quote me, wetland creation is when there is no wetland that currently exists. You're creating a wetland, a brand new wetland, a brand new system. So actually, I think what you may have been describing is actually enhancement or restoration of a previously existing wetland. So you're extending that. So what you were saying was actually fulfilling what I was asking. Wetland creation is usually much more difficult because there is no pre-existing wetland. And you have to make sure it maintains itself and survives as a wetland. So I think you were already in the right direction, but I think a wetland consultant would be able to help, clarify a potential plan for mitigation. And again, I would never count out creation, but I think in this spot, it would be more enhancement restoration because you already have an existing wetland system there already, which could be an easier activity to complete. The ratio may not, pending what the wetland agency agrees on, the ratio may not be 2-to-1. It could be a little larger, maybe a 3-to-1.
So I understand what you're saying, Anna, and I think it's just you and I speak a little bit different language because of our professions. So, but I do know what you mean. I would have called it like I did, even though you're absolutely right. It's an extension of an existing wetland. When I've worked on projects where Salt Meadow Park, we created a wetland where there was not one, anywhere near it actually. But you see my point though. This is just it seems to me that would be the logical thing to do here, would be to enlarge it, to use your terminology, and therefore maybe to use your words, enhance it.
Yeah, you were on the right track, I think. Just solidifying that idea.
Yeah. Again, it would be, I'll just say a couple things and I'll make this quick because I know you have other applications. So, and I know this is obvious, but I just need to state it for the record. We didn't create the lot. The lot is a lot of record. That's why I showed you the record subdivision map. I think we did all the right things. We had the boundary redelineated. We did the best we could to design the septic system, have it reviewed and approved so that it's as far as possible from the inland wetland. And we're simply trying to provide I can't imagine that anybody would think we haven't provided the simplest residential setting here. So I think it's really the best we can do. It's pretty simple. I don't know, I'm not qualified to know, but I think I should say for the record that we ought to have Rich Snarsky weigh in on whether the enhancement of, to use your terms, Anna, of the existing wetland actually would provide a benefit in this particular instance. Is it worth we'd have to map it out and see exactly what kind of vegetation would have to be removed and whether or not that included trees of a certain size. You know, I don't know the answer to this, but is it worth doing that for this loss of 350 square feet of wetlands? We're going to lose it because of the placement of fill. We're going to replant it. It won't have the hydrology anymore to be an inland wetland, I assume, because of the placement of fill. But if you look, you'll see that we are replanting it. No question it's being lost, but it's being replanted with native shrubs. So I guess that's really all I wanted to say. We'll go back and I'll meet with Rich, and we'll definitely extend the plantings as Lee talked about to the stone wall, along a limited disturbance to the stone wall. And if the agency wants us to look at the enhancement of the wetland, if you could tell me that you would like us to do that, we will.
I just wanted to add to the record, because we were talking about, Martin, you mentioned wildlife, and I did want to remind the agency that there is case law regarding consideration of wildlife impacts. I believe it's the Riverbend case, but specifically the agency, you can consider impacts to wildlife within an inland wetland. You do need substantial evidence in the record for a denial of that type. However, for activities within the upland, that decision does eliminate the ability to consider impacts of upland review area impacts to wildlife.
That's right.
That's specific.
Yes, and it's always good to have case law to remind us. Mike, as you talk to Rich Snarsky and you say if it's worth it or not, I think, you know, different currencies of worth can often be used. So, you know, as you discuss with him, and, you know, I guess I would say, I don't think this entire decision should be predicated on what he decides is worth it or not. But I think having some evidence and data or some information about what adding, you know, 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio of enhanced wetland would be is worth pursuing.
But I think that's what I mean. I just said it differently. That's exactly what I mean. And I'll say it again, I'm not qualified to make the evaluation. So, but we'll definitely involve him, and I will ask him to attend the next meeting also.
Okay. Anything else from the agency before I?
Yeah, one last thing. Although, you know, maybe physical disturbances and structures in the upland review zone, yes, that case law stands, but things like light intrusion and noise intrusion do physically impact the wetlands themselves. And so there's that consideration.
Exactly. And what stormwater runoff, all of that. And yes.
So I guess I have to say this for the record too. This is, again, a lot of record, and I would imagine that the owner has a right to build a house on the lot. I don't know. I don't know how else we can do that reasonably, other than what we've shown. I don't know. Let me say it this way. I don't know how you could build a house on the lot and avoid everything that was just talked about.
Well, I guess what I would say, Mike, is I think in our town in particular, our sense of house size is, you're saying this is a really small house, and fair enough. My house is 1,800 square feet. So I hear a lot of this about how anything under 2,000 square feet is tiny. So there was we did actually deny an application on Hunter's Trail, and that house was like less than 10 feet from the wetland, and they tried to make it as tiny as they could. I'm not sure what the driveway looked like. It was kind of insane. So yes, I think to your point, this seems reasonable, but we all have our different sense of reasonableness, and so 1,200 square feet, definitely on the small side. It's nice to have a driveway. It's nice to have a patio. Are those givens for every single house in town? No. So I would say that as well, as you're saying this, yes, it's been deemed a buildable lot. How and what gets built on that? There isn't a set thing. You have to have septic and you need a house. But outside of that, it's kind of, what people want.
So this house again is 1,200 square feet and.
Yes, I totally hear you.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. And what I was gonna say is, and I don't know the answer to this, but if it was 1,000 square feet, or if it was 800 square feet, would that make a difference? And I'm not asking you to answer, I'm just saying it for the record. Would it make a difference if we had no driveway pad? If we made a little pull off of Old Schoolhouse Road, so the people who live here could pull off the side of the road and walk up to their house and not be able to park near their house and not be able to have a guest at least park near the house. Would that, again, I'm not asking you to answer it, but would that really make a difference? And that's the thought process I went through when I was trying to be reasonable. I was simply doing the best I can to protect the inland wetland and at the same time make reasonable use, residential, single family residential, reasonable, and I think simple use of the parcel. And that's really it in a nutshell. So if you would like me to look at enhancement of the existing wetland, if you could tell me that, I certainly will, and I will engage Rich in it and be back to you.
Well, I will ask the agency members, is this something that we are interested in investigating, or given what we've heard and seen from the application, does that matter for how you think you may be leaning on this application? Because if it really wouldn't change, then there's no reason to go through.
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Because you're right, Mike. I'm not going to ask you to go through this, but if it's not really going to matter on how we proceed, then you can leave this application as is.
Yeah, and that's why it's not a tremendous amount of work, but it is some time, and some work to do it. We'd certainly be happy to do it, but I just want to make sure that's the direction you're.
Well, I guess what I would say to you is I don't think that anybody, and I'm going to just speak for the people who are not speaking, but you can speak if you'd like. I don't think anybody wants to go on record. You're asking us to say a particular thing, and I don't think anybody wants to necessarily ask you that and then be expected to give a positive response next time. So I think, and Aaron, I mean, we've asked for some information from applicant, but I don't think asking for information shouldn't then bind us to a positive outcome. Is that right?
I'm reading this as the applicant clarifying that you want him to explore mitigation, basically, with the wetland scientists. That's kind of.
And I think that's what we've said, Mike, is that it would be great if you could talk to Rich Snarsky if,
Okay.
and just, you know, the information that we've asked is, and we have said it, and I will say it, is that, you know, it would be worthwhile to understand if there are if you could mitigate for destroying a wetland and filling it in. And perhaps that will be important in our decision next month. But I think without that, I think what you can see for tonight is probably without that it's, you know, there's concern about this application, in particular filling in wetlands.
Okay,
I think I would focus on that section 10.2D. You know, in looking at the irreversible or irretrievable loss of a wetland. Which would be caused by this proposed activity, including the extent to which such activity would foreclose a future ability to protect, enhance, or restore such resources, and any mitigation measures which may be considered as a condition of issuing this permit. So this is the agency's responsibility, but not limited to measures to 1, prevent or minimize pollution or other environmental damage, 2, maintain or enhance existing environmental quality, or 3, in the following order of priority, restore, enhance, and create productive wetland or watercourse resources. And so that, I think, is sort of where the agency was going this evening, and in those orders. So I think I would have the conversation, Mike, with Rich. You know, these are the concerns from the commission regarding the permanent loss of wetlands, and how do you think this should best be mitigated? And including these options. Is there a way for, you know, enhancement of the existing wetland system? And then, you know, last on that list is creation of wetlands. So I think that at least having some of that new information for next week would be, not next week, excuse me, next month would be helpful. I don't know how much you would get as far as other alternatives for footprint or driveway that do not include a permanent loss. You know, as you said, you're limited to pull the building forward. Even with an option like a variance, you still may not be able to get anywhere with that due to the health code and separating distances from the property line. So I'm not sure that's an option.
okay.
I think that would be a good start. Is the agency agreeable to that?
Yes, I am.
I am.
All right.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
That get you too?
We'll be back next month.
We would
Thank
just need a motion to continue the public hearing to the October 12th meeting.
I make a motion, we continue the public hearing to application, what is it? Application 23-49, old 24 Old Scout Schoolhouse Road, to our next meeting on October 2nd.
Second,
All right. All in favor for continuance? Raise your hand, say aye.
aye.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And
Thanks, guys.
look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next, so we are done with our public hearings for this evening. We are moving on to our regular meeting agenda items. And the first up we have is 23-44, 128 Chittenden Field Lane. For the agency members, Aaron and Maria were kind enough to draft a staff report and resolution. And of course, we have the applicants with us to bring us up to speed on what has happened since we last saw them.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killingworth, Connecticut. Again, here tonight on behalf of my client, Gulick and Company LLC, for their project at 128 Chittenden Field Lane in your town of Madison, Connecticut. Again, this is for the boathouse / habitable space. Last time we were in front of the commission last month, you had asked for 2 things, and then staff had asked for an additional, making it 3 revisions. I'll go through it real quick. I don't know if you guys need to see the drawings, but you added a construction sequence for the removal of fill in the wetlands, which we added to the plan, which was reviewed by town staff. You had asked that the original wetland line that we showed from back in, I believe, 2000 be removed, which we did. And then staff had asked us to add a front face of house line, more so for zoning, which we have added that as well. So those were the 3 revisions. I can put the drawing up on the screen, or Aaron can. They were really, really simple. We got it done like a day after that you had asked for it. But that's pretty much all we have to add at this juncture. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we can put the drawing up, but it's, it's been reviewed by town staff, those minor changes.
Thank you. All right, agency members, do you have any questions? And as you recall, this was an accessory structure that was in the wetlands. It has been moved to outside the inland wetlands, and the site plan has been nicely tidied up with respect to removing the wetland flags and those other details that Mr. Harkin just discussed.
My only comment is thank you for making the changes, and thank you for being open to moving the structure, and just thank you for making the changes.
Yeah, no problem. Like I say, is taking input from everybody makes it a better project. So anytime that anybody has any concerns or questions, please bring them up, because just because we have an engineering stamp doesn't mean that we're always right. So
That's for
Makes me want to get an engineering stamp now. Almost always right. Are there other questions or comments?
Nope.
No. Okay. We do have a resolution drafted to approve this with our standard language. I will make a motion that we approve application 23-44 128 Chittenden Field Lane with what Aaron has just put up on the screen, our standard language, that there will be ENS controls, that the debris from the old shed will be removed by hand only, existing limits of lawn shall not be expanded, and then this other language down here being standard. So that is my motion.
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion, any other discussion from the agency members? Okay, all in favor of approving as outlined? Raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's great. Thank you again. It's very helpful that you made those changes, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great night. It was good seeing everybody.
Mike.
Okay. Our next is 23-46 47 Deepwood Drive. Again, as a reminder, this was initially a significant activity because the homeowners wanted to put in an above ground pool, and part of it was going to be within the actual inland wetlands itself, which triggered the significant activity. They have also since then revised their location twice, I think now. And hopefully you all had a chance to look at the revised site plan and the pictures of where the pool is going to be or is proposed. So we have the applicant here. Are there any questions or clarifications that anybody would like for this project?
Tyler is here. Tyler, did you want to walk through your changes at all for the commission?
You guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, we are.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so last meeting we had that oval shaped pool on the side yard, which my wife and I actually didn't like aesthetically. So we took, I forgot if it was, I think it might have been Joe's advice to put it where the patio is. Originally we didn't want to do that because we didn't want to rip out our patio because we did like that, but aesthetically, we think that's our second or our next best option. So where the brick patio was, we decided to go there. And I had the installation company come out. And since it's all bricks already where the pool would be, they wouldn't need heavy machinery or anything today because it's all flat ground already. And the bricks are, I forgot if it's 3 or 4 inch size bricks in the ground already. So there wouldn't be, like I said, any heavy machinery. And they said if they need to, they will use the silt fencing if it's required.
Well, I think the location is amazing compared to before. And I like that the pool is now to scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not an engineer. I'm just an ordinary civilian. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I think we're gonna need a silt fence, so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the installer said they had no problem doing that.
Are there other questions, comments on this application?
No, this looks good to me.
Okay, so Aaron and Maria again have drafted a proposed draft resolution that does include language on ENS control measures and also specifies installation without heavy machinery. And if they need it, to come back and chat with us about that. Does anybody want to make a motion?
This is Joe. So I'll make a motion that this agency approve application 23-46, an above ground swimming pool at 47 Deepwood Drive. It is within an upland review area. And based on the memo drafted by our town planner, we have 3 conditions. Of course, before activity, 48 hours in advance, just let the wetland agent know that things are commencing, that there is ENS controls in order, and try to minimize the use of heavy machinery as much as possible.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, well, we haven't, so I'm gonna second that motion. We're almost there, Tyler.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Don't jump in
So I
yet.
will second Joe's motion. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving this as discussed?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay. Now you are welcome to go install your pool. And thank you for working with us to make this have the least amount of adverse impacts on the wetland.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you and have a good night.
Thanks, Tyler.
Take care.
Okay. Moving along, we have application 23-50 Wildwood Ave. This was a regulated activity modification to relocate a septic system within the 100-foot upland review area. This was something, as I'm sure most of you recall, that we walked and discussed a few years ago. And it looks like the soils didn't pan out exactly as they needed to pan out for the proposed septic. And we have the applicants here.
Mike, who would you like to propose, detail your proposal?
I can handle that.
Okay, Dave, if you want to identify yourself for the record, please.
Yeah. For the record, my name is David Nafis. I am a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Nafis and Young Engineers, 1355 Middletown Avenue in Northford, Connecticut. I want to start by saying I think Mike Harkin is wrong, because as an engineer, anybody with a stamp, we do know everything, but just kidding. I went to school with Mike, so that's why I say that. Went to school with Mike Ott also, so it's kind of a small little world. I can share my screen here?
Yes.
Okay. That's the new one. Hold on a second. If you may remember about a year ago, this is for lot 3 of the 3-lot subdivision for out on sheep pasture. In the original proposal that was approved, we had a septic system over in this area here. We have the 40-foot and the 50-foot buffers that was allowed for grading and some vegetation. But after review, when they put the new house in, the town sanitarian told us the health code didn't allow the house to be 50 feet down grading of the septic system. So we originally attempted to move the house over and out of the way, but what happened was it ended up pushing the grading in this area out farther into the buffer areas, not into the wetlands, but into the buffer. So it would be restrict that area. So what we've done with that is we've moved the septic system over here where we actually have some pretty good soils to do it. We tried to push this far as, because you can see it comes out here. We tried to keep the system back as close to the house and actually as far up as you can, but in this area we encountered ledge. So with the ledge, we couldn't move the system any farther this way. So this is basically about as far as we can get the system back away from the wetlands. We're honoring all the existing buffers that we have. This is the 40-foot and the 50-foot. So everything, all the major disturbance is outside the 50-foot, and some of the grading that encroaches on the 40-foot. That's basically the bulk of what we've changed. The landscaper put together let me get down to it. So a little further down. Put together some plantings in the area. I don't know if he's here tonight to discuss it, but because I don't know as much about the plantings as he does, but we are going to enhance the buffers like we have on the rest of the site with a bunch of plantings he's put in on these plans. I mean, that's basically the gist of what the request is for. It's basically because the septic system didn't fit in that area, so we've moved it to a better area and tried to maintain all the existing setbacks that we have from previous applications. If there's any questions, I can certainly try to answer them.
Any questions from agency members?
Before, on the original plan, before that, you had to do all the grading around the septic system. What was that going to look like over there? Oh, okay.
Right there. That's the original one, yeah. Some of that grading was to establish this is where we're putting like the biofilter and stuff, where we're running roof leaders into a kind of like little like mini rain garden type area over here to separate create a buffer before the runoff runs off into the wetlands.
Yeah, I was more curious about on the south side of the house, but so that grading got moved south closer to the the wetland, it sounded like, right?
No, this, what you can see, here's these are the two lines here. This is the 40-foot, and then there's a 50-foot buffer. You talking about in this area here?
Yes, yes.
That really hit, that's, I mean, pull that up on the, so you can, let me go back up a few sheets.
The sheet that we were just looking at.
Yeah, well, that was the original, and this will be the new proposed one, if I can get there fast enough. Let me go up a little more. That's not the good one. There we go. So you can see it still says we're still the 40, and we're still maintaining the 40 and 50-foot buffers in that area. But what really happened is it kind of pushes out this way a little bit.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Because you know, that's just we have no choice, because with the grading and the ledge and the ground, it kind of keeps the system up higher. So we have to bring in a little bit of fill for the septic system to work. And so that's basically what the grading is for, because that's based on the health code.
Yep, I got it. I got it.
Dave, and maybe this is a question for Chris. Is this planting plan different than the original, or the originally approved planting plan in this area?
Good
Is it-
question.
Yeah, it's a little different in that originally, if we went back to the old one, we had a lot more native because we weren't moving into that area. We didn't have as much defined plantings. We were preserving the existing. And in this plan, what we did is you can still see there's like a beech grove there that was on the same plan before. And we've saved as many trees to the upper right of the septic area. But what we're doing is we're trying to maintain a strong shrub line to show that there's a demarcation not to go beyond that into the wetlands. And we did not put trees into this planting right next to the septic because the sanitarian had some concerns that might mess with the septic system itself. So again, we would put in as much as we felt like was appropriate for this, all parties that were interested, I guess is a way of saying it. But again, they're all native and, appropriate for the location.
So are these counts? Do you have counts for these plants, or is it just per circle?
It's per circle.
All right, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions from agency members for the applicant? Okay. Guess we used up lots of our questions earlier.
It's hard to remember, Kia, going back, like, I'm sure we liked the septic system on the opposite side of the house, farther from wetlands, but it is what it is. But it just seems like, of course, I'm going to approve this plan, but I wonder if they could have maybe proposed it where the well is, and then the well goes to the front. Because it seems like they want this pool really bad, so they don't want to put the septic up to the left side of the house. But as far as how it's designed, I'm sure it will have a little impact on the wetlands.
We did consider that, but the grading there goes back towards the house also there.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense then. So the well is a little uphill.
The well is down gradient. The well is downgrade is up gradient of the house.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
But it's good to get that clarified. Other questions or comments from agency members? Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that we approve 23-50 Wildwood Ave, map 54, lot 21, with the draft resolution that staff has provided for us, And there are some specific conditions, and I believe that, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, that are linked to the original approval. So
Correct.
yes, it looked very familiar. So that, we have this for number one, that the regulated activity permit to build a single family home pool with associated site improvements in an upland review area of an inland wetland remain in effect as shown below. And it details what Aaron was clarifying, that the wetland buffer plantings and bioswales shall be incorporated into a 50-foot wetland buffer area. And then explaining the intent behind that buffer area, which we discussed in quite some detail a few years ago. A condensed inspection and maintenance chart shall be prepared by the design engineer, identifying the inspection, management, and maintenance frequency required for the stormwater drainage swales. It shall be submitted to the agency's agent for review prior to filing the revised record subdivision map. Reference to this maintenance chart shall be included in the individual deed for the lot. And again, I think this is language from the original. A landscape professional shall monitor the bioswales and wetland buffer plantings for a duration of 3 years. And we have the financial guarantee for ENS control shall be submitted prior to commencement of any regulated activity in accordance with section 14 of the Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourses regulations in an amount based upon the cost of materials and installation of said controls as shown on the approved plan plus 10% contingency. And the shared driveway shall remain unpaved. And then the rest are our standard language for being notified and having ENS controls in place. So this is, I have made this motion and kind of given a brief overview of the details. Would anybody like to second?
I'll second.
Okay, Martin seconds. Any last discussion for this?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
thank you for coming back to us, and hopefully all will go well.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is 23-43 251 Boston Post Road. This is for the new restaurant. And they needed more clarity, and they had some requests from last time it was tabled from August. And my understanding, Aaron, is they're asking to come back in October.
Yes, I did receive a request from the applicant this afternoon asking to table the application to the October meeting to allow the engineers to incorporate some of the recommendations from Bob Russo into their plans.
Okay, do we have to make a motion for that?
Yes, please.
All right. I move that we table application 23-43 251 Boston Post Road to our October 2nd meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Aye.
We're gonna have a busy October. Yay. Okay. Our next application is 23-48 31 Stony Lane. This is a subdivision referral for proposed open space conservation district to create 6 residential building lots. And I know we probably have many people or some people for the applicant. And just a reminder to the agency, we've seen a couple different variations of this, and I guess this is our latest version for this property. And I will let the applicants decide who they want to have discuss.
Just for housekeeping, Attorney Shansky, I see, I assume it's John and Adam in attendance, and I just wanted to confirm that that is John Giannotti, if you all would like to be promoted as well. Just wanted to make sure you had everybody here.
Thank you.
Okay, they're joining. We're all set. Thanks, Marjorie.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm attorney Marjorie Shansky and I represent Barbary 12 LLC, the owner of 31 Stony Lane. And as Aaron said, I'm here this evening with Adam Greenberg and John Giannotti, who are principals of the company. I'm here with Chuck Mandel and Tony Bolduc from Thomas A. Stevens and Associates, the civil engineers on the project. And I'm here with Bob Russo, our soil scientist, and you have materials from everybody on this file. This is a subdivision referral request. We are on our way to the Planning and Zoning Commission to propose an open space conservation district pursuant to section 27 of the Madison zoning regulations. Half of this property, as Chuck will explain, is going to be under a conservation restriction, which we're discussing with the Madison Land Trust. And we've reduced to these 6 building lots. And as of yesterday, Trent Joseph has issued a memo indicating the feasibility of the septic systems that are proposed. And the nature of our interest in meeting with the commission right now is to comply with state law that requires that for properties with wetlands on them, that we make application to the agency not later than or contemporaneously with the application to the Planning and Zoning Commission. But the level of inquiry is limited to the subdivision referral, and as the individual lots, should the district be adopted, are slated for development, those that require to have regulated activity permits will be back for full regulated activity review by the agency. So I also referenced in my cover letter that the minutes of the October 22nd, 2022 meeting of the agency shows those are actually the minutes of the site walk that the agency took of the property at that time. And the minutes recall the observation of the agency members of the delineation of the wetlands. So I'm going to hand this over to Chuck Mandel and then also have Bob Russo talk about the report and analysis that he did for the wetlands, so you have a full picture of the property as it is now proposed to be developed. Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, good evening, Chuck Mandel, agent for the applicants. So this is a proposed project. It was an open space conservation district. It consists of 6 residential lots. It's on approximately 5.88 acres, and we're proposing greater than a 50% being dedicated as open space. We have had some discussions with the Open Space Commission, and they are very interested in the land trust, and they are interested in obtaining access to this property. It's adjacent to the Neck River and Fort Path Road and Stony Lane, and it's just north of the Goddard Farm. The previous owners, we had an application for 12 units with quite a bit of infrastructure involved, with roads and various improvements. This is a much scaled down version. Most of the activity will be outside the 100-foot review. We're trying to limit that. We are mitigating stormwater on each lot. We'll also have septic systems proposed. I believe the closest septic system is on, I believe it's lot 2. That's about 60 feet away for the primary. We've done extensive soil testing, so this will support the residential units. We're also proposing an unusual, it's a passive nitrogen system, down gradient of the septics. It's a combination of sand and sawdust, and that will further mitigate the nitrogen on there. And that's shown on the plans as well. The soils are, okay, so let's see. Okay, so, and we have latitude with the setbacks based on this open space subdivision. If the agency was interested in how the setbacks got accounted for. We have a storm tech installation, backfill material with the roof leader downspouts will be directed to the underground units, and they show on the accompanying plans. I'm not going to get too far into the drainage report that's on file, or that's part of the record right now. Most of this will focus on the inland wetlands, and Bob Russo did an extensive study for functions and values. And I will let Bob take over from there unless there are any other questions, or we can get to those at the end. It might behoove us to just take a quick look, Erin, if you could put sheet number C3 up, so the commission gets a sense of what we're proposing. So we outlined the 100-foot review is that yellow line that you see on the plan. There's another sheet that shows the lots further to the south. There are additional 2 lots, but the inland wetlands were flagged by, oh, there you go, by Bob Russo. We're also showing the 50-foot line. That's a much more narrow line, but if you see where it says 100-foot review towards the bottom, it's labeled as a 100-foot review. Next to it is the 50-foot review. So that is, there you go. That's shown clearly on there. I said we're trying to mitigate this. Some of the lots are not at all, are actually 5 and 6 are not within the review zone at all. And Bob, I guess you can speak to the actual impact to the wetlands.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bob Russo. I'm a soil scientist with CLA Engineers in Norwich, Connecticut. I believe you have before you a letter that I prepared looking at both the site and functioning on the current plan that's in front of you. Just to review the conditions on the site, you probably remember, I think many of you have been out there, the higher elevations are over on the eastern side of the lot near Stony Lane, and it slopes down to the wetland that's associated with the Neck River. There's about 28 feet of elevation change from the highest point to the lowest point of the site. And currently, that's the way the surface water flows. There's some drainage that comes from Stony Road onto the site that runs overland to the wetland. And there's also sort of a small farm and meadow farm field area there, as well as some shrub and some trees on the site. The wetland itself is a scrub shrub swamp. It really has predominantly smaller than 4-inch diameter, things like red maples, clumps of alders, spice bush. It's a palustrin scrub shrub swamp, and it's connected to the Neck River. So if you throw on some waders and go out and, you know, pick your way through, in the springtime, that swamp has a water elevation that is the same as the Neck River, and the water floods in from the Neck River and is continuous up to the edge of the wetland. I want to go back for just a minute and talk about the soils mapped on the site. In the northern part of the site, where the first 3 lots are predominantly, is a glacial outwash soil. Thank you. It's sandy, gravelly soil, very permeable. As you move south of that, and you move south of where the lobe of wetland kind of bumps up toward the street, that is a glacial till area. And if you've been on the site, you can see there's lots of boulders out there. It's a different type of soil. The wetland soils are Catton and Freetown soils. They're a very poorly drained soil, mostly formed in decomposed organic matter. They have standing water for long periods throughout the year. There are a couple things that I think are of note here in terms of looking at the functions and values of the wetland. The Connecticut DEP Natural Diversity Database doesn't show any known presence of any threatened, endangered, or special concern species out here. It's important to note that this site is served by community water So we're not looking at wells in this sand and gravel that's out here. The Neck River itself, DEP has some fisheries data that I attached to the letter. There is a warm water fishery in the Neck River. The local land use, local zonings R1, and the local land use is residential around the site. The Neck River is a perennial stream. It has about a 6.6 square mile watershed. So there's a decent flow out there. The wetland itself, though, is broad. It's a floodplain, which contributes to its function of detaining and retaining floodwaters. But the wetlands also cut up by roads like Route 1, a driveway that goes through it to the west of the site, and the upstream road crossing as well. The Neck River's a Class A water, but it's impaired because of bacteria. If you look at the municipal separate stormwater data on the NEMO site, bacteria is an impairment in the Neck River. The main body of the wetland between Route 1 upstream to the next road, Fort Path Road, is greater than 30 acres. That's a large area of wetland. That contributes to its function as well. Previously, the town's consultant had asked whether there were vernal pool obligates using the wetland. I did go out this spring to search for them and didn't find them. There are other amphibians out there, spring creeper, gray tree frog. They're very likely, there are painted turtles out there. There could be other species of turtle. I'd certainly expect some that I have listed in the back of this report. And I'll just mention, in terms of use by vernal pool obligates, we do have a perennial stream here, and we do have water that connects the wetland on the site with the perennial stream. So it wouldn't be, strictly speaking, a vernal pool, even if I had found obligates out there. And the fact that I found obligates out there doesn't mean that they're not occasional users of it. Those species will breed to some extent in floodplain wetlands and scrub shrub swamps such as this. It's just not a really important habitat for their reproduction. I think that some of the most important functions that come out of my assessment are that there's groundwater recharge and discharge going on here, especially where we have the glacial outwash. There's a local aquifer that's going to be discharging into the Neck River. We certainly have flood flow alteration going on here. This is a broad, flat area of wetland that's really well vegetated, so it's going to slow down floodwater. The DEP data show that there is fish habitat here. And because we're near different roads, different paved surfaces, things like sediments and toxicants are removed and processed in this wetland, as well as nutrients. This wetland does produce biomass, and that eventually ends up in Long Island Sound, which is another important function. The wetland's used for wildlife habitat and recreation. The shoreline's really well vegetated and stable. So essentially, we have a wetland that has a lot of primary functions. Then I'd like to move on to what's happening in the upland review zone. There's nothing proposed to happen in the wetland itself. There are some activities in the upland review zone, and I just want to read what's going on. In Lot 2, there is septic system grading and erosion and sedimentation control measures. Thank you for adjusting the screen. In Lot 3, there's a portion of the house, septic system, stormwater swale, with it, the grading associated with it, and some erosion and sedimentation control measures. And in Lot 4, a portion of a house, septic system, grading that goes with it, grading for a pool, and erosion and sedimentation control measures. Given that there aren't any activities directly in the wetland, we don't expect that there's going to be any change in functions like the flood flow alterations. We're also still going to have groundwater discharge and recharge at the interface of the wetland. We're not altering that area, and the effort to re-infiltrate roof runoff is going to work to keeping that water into the ground and working its way gradually down to the wetland. There's also, as I mentioned before, there's stormwater from the existing town road. You can see that Stevenson Associates has designed a measure to capture that, give it some treatment, and then allow it to run in a swale back down to the wetland in a very similar way to what's happening today. We don't expect the fish and shellfish habitat in the wetland to change. The wetland itself is not going to be directly altered. The stormwater is going to be treated. The velocities out there are not going to change out of the Neck River itself. So we expect that function to remain intact. As is the case for toxicant retention and nutrient removal. Those sources are certainly still going to be there. We're going to try to avoid adding anything else by putting good best management practices in place during construction. Production export, none of the vegetation in the wetland itself is going to be removed, and we still see that wetland being a productive wetland. And again, the wildlife habitat function, I think, is going to remain as well. I did make some recommendations at the end of my letter, just saying that first of all, the stormwater swale that's on lot 3 should have some check dams in it, just to make sure those flows during and after construction remain at a very slow velocity. I also requested that where there was just silt fence shown as perimeter erosion and sedimentation control, it be bumped up to a silt fence and wood chip barrier. And I recommended that there should be some shrub plantings in the area and the conservation easement where there had been some test pitting done. Since I made this recommendation, I know the landscape architect on the project has said there's been some significant regrowth in a lot of those areas, and I would certainly like to go back and check and see if those plantings are called for in all of those areas. So I think that there were some modifications that I recommended, but I think if those are put in place and if proper best management practices are maintained, wetland impacts on this site can be avoided. I'll stop there and just ask the commission if there are any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from any of the agency members?
As usual, Bob Russo is very, very thorough. I would only recommend as a condition, like we heard earlier, putting those metal badges along the boundary of the open space in the rear property lines of the lots, that it's a open space area beyond the property lines.
Chuck Mandel here. Sometimes we've done that with the land trust in the past, Joe. Would that be wetlands and land trust plaques?
I think Aaron can help you answer that one, whichever is best. Is it the land trust that will be controlling the open space?
Yes, ultimately.
I probably would favor that it be the boundary be marked open space / land trust use beyond the property lines.
The land use typically does delineate their property boundary. We don't have confirmation yet from the land trust that they will accept this parcel, but they are interested and looking to do a site walk on the property. So again, staff would support that as well, having the land transfer.
Yeah, and Chuck Mandel, typically before it's conveyed, Joseph, we do need to delineate those with those plaques.
Okay, perfect. Just didn't want to miss that on our end, since we talked about it on a previous application.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for Bob. It looks like the Neck River isn't on our property. There's the floodplain wetlands extend onto the property. Is that true?
That's correct, Martin. Yes.
Okay. It looks like the Neck River actually becomes somewhat fragmented in that large wetland system, sort of loses its river-like structure. And I was wondering if, you said that there was a pretty firm wetland boundary there. Was there any evidence of any flood events that extend beyond the wetland border?
Again, for the record, Bob Russo, there wasn't any evidence of that. And there's such a significant amount of vegetation in between that I think it's not that likely that you're going to get a rack line or something like that pushing up into the edge. And it is a broad, diffuse flow that goes through there, as you would imagined. Yeah.
You mentioned that some of the soil is outwash and then it goes into the glacial till where all the boulders are. It's as I recall from the sidewalk, it was, even though it was till and bouldery, it was still pretty loose and sandy soil. Is that right?
It's still a sandier textured soil. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, Martin, just one more thing. The flood zone is delineated on the plan. It's about at the 14, 16-foot contour. It kind of follows that contour line.
Yeah, I saw that, and I think it's, again, that's the flood elevation by elevation and survey versus anything that's really active in there, apparently. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Other questions from agency members? And just a reminder, it's a subdivision referral, which means any of the lots that do have activity in the regulated activity area will come back to us at some point in time. So Aaron, I know we had a letter from the public, and I don't know where we stand on having letters with respect to subdivision referrals, or?
Correct. This is, so at your last meeting, and I guess it was left, the application was missing some information at your last meeting. For example, a narrative, the drainage report, wetland report, and the agency held off on determining if you needed an additional site walk on the property, or if you deemed the activity to be a significant activity. And so because you felt there wasn't enough information to make those decisions at the time, you tabled the application to this evening. Now, having been provided with clarification as far as what specifically is being requested, and that this really is just a subdivision referral, you should at least close that, wrap up that question from earlier at your last meeting. The commission looked at this site, walked it extensively in October of 2022. Do you feel a need to walk the site again to make any determinations for a subdivision referral? And two, do you feel a 6-lot subdivision referral in the upland is a significant activity? And then having those out of the way, then if this is not a significant activity in a public hearing, and it's at the agency's discretion whether or not you're going to entertain any public comments on a subdivision referral. We have not received any other applications to intervene or anything of that nature with respect to this application. So
Okay.
that's where we are.
All right, so I guess our first step is, I know probably not everybody was on the site walk, but does anybody feel that they need to do a site walk in order to assess this as a subdivision referral?
No.
I
I
don't.
don't think so.
Okay, so that is pretty easy, so no. And for, and this has changed hugely, right, since we first saw this. So I guess I will then ask, does anybody feel the current application as proposed as a subdivision referral warrants the the designation of significant activity, given all the information we now have at hand.
And that there's no activity currently.
Right, exactly. Which I think is interesting for us. I mean, it's not, it's not, yeah. Okay, so I think it is, I think unless someone speaks very quickly, it is not a significant activity in its current form as as presented as this subdivision referral for this evening. That being said, I will then offer up our staff report and proposed language. So for subdivision referrals, just as a reminder, oftentimes we just say, yes, it's a subdivision referral, we refer it to P&Z, or we can add notes and a memo. In this case, staff has drafted a memo for us to consider in this case. And basically, for application 23-48, 31 Stony Lane, the agency acknowledges the applicant's response to the previous application comments from the third-party engineer and wetland scientist, and significantly reduce the amount of units, impervious surface cover, and site disturbance proposed, which I feel we can probably all agree happened. The applicant shall return to the agency for regulated activity permits for the number of lots that have regulated activity prior to any site disturbance, and the agency encourages the protection of the open space parcel in perpetuity through transfer to the Madison Land Conservation Trust. So that would be our, unless and you want to add more things, that would be our response to this subdivision referral that would then be forwarded to planning and zoning. And I knew I spoke fast, but I know you all have this, but go ahead, Erin.
To clarify those lots that, as Bob Russo indicated, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 have activities within the upland review area.
Right. So lots 5 and 6 are completely out of the upland review area.
Unless, you know, a site.
Well, unless it changes. Right. And so that's why I phrased it as any of the lots that have regulated activity, obviously, will need to come back to us. Is everybody happy with the language that we have, that I have just read to you and staff drafted?
Yes, as
I
usual.
agree with it. Yep.
And I just like a little affirmation here sometimes. Just,
Yes.
okay.
Was there a second? Did you made that motion?
So I'm going to offer that as a motion now of what I just read. And
Second.
I was making sure everybody was on board. Okay, so any other discussion? I sense no discussion.
I approve.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. We'll just move it. All right, excellent. So thank you to the applicants. Clearly, you've done a lot of work on this. I think it's in a much better shape for wetland protection than initially it was. And we all appreciate the work that you've done to modify this application. And I suspect we will see you back here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. And our last regular is 23-20, 730 Durham Road. This was the restoration of his existing pond within 100-foot upland review, and it appears to be withdrawn for now, or withdrawn.
Yes, the application has been withdrawn.
That's easy.
That's great. I mean, not great, but that's, yes, it's easy to then move on. So we have 3 applications for receipt. We have, and recall for these that we need to decide if they're significant activity, or at the very least, if we want a site walk. So we have 23-51, 23 Bradley Road, map 38, lot 8. This is for construction of a single-family house and associated site improvements within the 100-foot upland review area. I believe staff has recommended a site walk, which I would agree with. is everyone okay?
Yeah, I think we need one too.
I agree.
Okay,
Yes,
Um,
the wetland has been delineated now in the
okay,
field. They would be ready for a site walk at our next meeting.
excellent. The next application that
Can we
has
stay
been,
on that? Can we stay on that for just for a second?
course.
Normally we do our site walks on the third Saturday. That's this Saturday. Do we have to advertise it or we're gonna have to schedule it for something that's not on our calendar?
Let me double check our meeting calendar. I forgot that we're in the second week this week.
Oh, yeah. Hmm,
Thought it was next weekend. It's the 23rd. No. Yes. It would be
That's-
September 23rd, the walk.
So
Okay.
that's the fourth Saturday of this month, right?
Yeah, we moved it to accommodate our meeting this week.
Oh,
so
did we already move it? Okay, good.
yeah, and we actually have 5 Saturdays this month. So, yay.
Yes, so at this point, we could schedule a walk to see the wetland delineation and the site. I don't have a revised plan as of yet from the applicant showing a house in compliance, but we would hope that we would have new information in by your next meeting, but at least you can see the site.
Okay, so site walk for our first receipt. The second is 23-53, 54 Scenic Road, map 115, lot 56. This is a regulated activity to remove beech trees, 10 beech trees within the inland wetland and within the inland wetland and 100-foot upland review area. So definitely probably a sidewalk since it's within the inland wetland.
Since we're doing
I
one, then
concur.
And then our last is 23-54, 284 Green Hill Road, map 64, lot 42. And this is regulated activity to construct a 30 by 30-foot addition to existing facilities building and associated site grading and stormwater management system within a 100-foot upland review area.
This is another one that you can walk. It's, however, the slope is heavily vegetated, so we likely won't be able to get down the slope. The actual wetland delineation. It is on town property and quite accessible to get into the parking lot, and you can see it right from the high school driveway, the subject area. But that's up to you. We can go there and look from the upland, or you can look at that on your own. That's up to you.
Well, so thoughts adding this to the sidewalk or not? It
Like
seems
we won't
like it's
get a-
one we can see, but go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like we won't get a good vantage point.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty clear on the site plan, you know, there is a slope, and right at the base of the slope is the wetland delineation. It hasn't changed in quite some time. So it was reflagged, and the topography is on the plan. It just physically getting down to the flags will be challenging.
Okay. Okay, so 2 sidewalks and 1 you can see on our own if we want.
We'll see the site plan.
I'm
See-
good with that.
Okay. And then we have a section 13. 23-52, 20 Squires Road, map 121, lot 22. Installation of a 21-foot round above ground pool and deck within the 100-foot upland review.
Yes.
That's already been done or approved.
And I believe all the application documents are attached. The wetlands were delineated on site, and staff was out there inspecting and measuring as well down the slope, and Maria issued that agent.
Okay. Great. So we have approval of our minutes. We have the August 7th and August 19th sidewalk minutes. Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes?
No, they look fine to me.
Yeah, I did a quick look through. But they look fine to me as well. Anybody else have comments?
No, nope.
I move,
Okay.
I move we approve the regular meeting minutes for August 7th, 2023.
Okay.
I'll
Second,
second that.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
And did you include, did you include the site walk or should we do? You just
Well,
did,
And,
I can because I didn't have any problems with the sidewalk minutes either, so.
Okay.
Either way, it's fine with me.
all right, well, we'll move to also. I move that we approve the minutes from August 19th, 2023 site walk minutes as well.
A second.
And all in favor? Okay,
Jane,
um,
can I do that? I wasn't there, so I,
you can abstain. It's
all
totally-
right.
So one abstention. Are there
two abstentions.
abstentions?
Yeah, so 3-0
Cool.
in favor.
Okay,
Okay.
That works.
all right. Inland Wetlands chair remarks, no, I think it sounds like we have a busy schedule for next month as well. And Erin, do you know, are there a lot of applications coming in general?
For other commissions?
No, well, for like.
Well,
do you
this is everything, so
have- For next month, okay. So
move
it's,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from our agenda and added 3.
Yep.
So-
all right, so it's pretty busy. Okay, no, I don't have any comments. The Inland Wetlands agent have any remarks?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay,
I move we adjourn tonight's meeting.
a second. All right, all in favor?